Hello, Notre Dame fans. This is Mike Singer, blueandgold.com with Todd Burlage. It is Thursday, April 29th, and our first episode of the Irish Huddle post Lou Somogyi's tragic passing. I mean, Todd and I were just talking before we started recording. I don't know what the future of our team-centric recruiting our team podcast is going to look like. Our recruiting pod, myself and Patrick Engel, Pod Like a Champion, will continue. But do we keep the Irish Huddle? What we do, who's going to be on here? Very much TBD. But really wanted to bring on Todd Burlage, who worked with Lou for 16 years, knew him for probably 20.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
To talk about
Yeah.
Lou. And so, Todd, I guess let's just go right into what's your first memory of Lou? I'm sure your first memory of Lou precedes the first time you met Lou and interacted with him, which I'm sure is the case for
Right.
most Notre Dame fans. So, what can you kind of remember about those times in their early 2000s or late 90s?
That's when it would have been, actually. It would have been late 90s. It was sort of funny, Michael. I was living in Fort Wayne and I was writing for the Journal Gazette, the daily paper there, the morning paper there. But I wasn't on the Notre Dame beat at this point. I was doing like Fort Wayne Fury, CBA basketball. I remember I had the IU football beat, which obviously didn't bring a lot of wins at that time. But I remember one day in my mailbox there on Cornell Circle, probably about 98, 99. Um, Out of nowhere arrived a Blue and Gold Illustrated magazine. Don't know how it ended up there. Don't know how it got sent to me, but it did. Had never seen one in my life. Like, oh, cool. This is really cool. Went out back, grabbed a beer, and started reading through it. I was absolutely amazed. I was in awe. I said, man, maybe someday I can work for this place. My word, what an amazing, informative, everything, all encompassing magazine. So, as fate would have it, then I picked up the Notre Dame beat with the Fort Wayne Journal Gazette in about 2001. So, Lou and I crossed paths. We weren't coworkers yet, but we crossed paths quite a bit. And again, like everybody else that we've heard now for the last week or so, I was very impressed by his knowledge and just his kindness and graciousness, willingness to talk to somebody like me that he'd never met, didn't know. And then in 2005, when there was some change coming at BGI, it looked like an opportunity for me to try to slide in there. And I reached out to Lou and said, hey, I'm interested in a job here with some departures. Said, come on up and interview. I came on up and interviewed, and I got the job in 2005. And I'm sure we could talk about some more stories from there. But that's kind of my history pre-working for Lou.
So when you got the BGI magazine, did you? I mean, you at least knew what BGI was, right? Before then, was that
I
just
heard of it. I'd
reading
never
it?
seen it. Indeed. Yes.
What's really
Yeah.
interesting, Todd, is so as we are, and we'll touch on this upcoming issue of BGI, which is yes, the magazine is still around, monthly in the off season, weekly during the football season. It's a lot
Wonderful.
different now without Lou Somogyi, that's for sure. And I don't even know what the Lou wrote about 60% of it. I mean, he was an animal for that magazine, so don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But
Don't
so
bury
anyway,
us yet.
yeah. So as we're kind of preparing for this upcoming issue, which again we'll touch on, uh, we're finding old issue or old articles from Lou to feature, and reading an article from Lou Somogyi after the national championship game in '88. It literally felt like I was reading Lou Somogyi like the week before, like last week or something. Like it was
Yeah.
just
Right.
vintage Lou. It's like the dude has just it's been such a constant over the years. I just wanted to share that. So yeah, definitely uh, make sure we'll dive into the upcoming issue of BGI, and we'll have a link to our store where you can purchase that, which I don't believe we'll be able to purchase for a couple more weeks, or at least one more week. But yeah, so let's talk about 2005 to, I mean, current day. You've been with Blue and Gold. You're more of a stringer now, but you're full time working with Lou. So just
Yes.
tell me about those days.
Those days were interesting because, yes, I was hired on as the full-time football and men's basketball beat writer. So I was entrenched, all the practices, all the everything that goes along, all the travel that goes along. One of the things that used to drive me nuts is when I was on the road. Those are long days, as you know, Michael. Those
Yeah.
game days, they are long days. I mean, some of those home games, be doing TV and radio interviews at 9, 10 in the morning, and we wouldn't wrap that edition up till 3 o'clock in the morning. So that could be quite a grind right there. But in 2005, when I hired on, yeah, I loved it. I had got to travel everywhere. But I guess the thing that drove me crazy was Lou was such a perfectionist with that magazine and everything that went into it, is he would make me, what I'd do is I'd send all my stories in, then lay out the pages, and then Lou would his cell phone. He'd call me on the cell phone, and it'd make me, wherever I was, if I was out to dinner or whatever, I would have to go back to the hotel, and he would fax the pages to the hotel for me to help edit. They had three guys back in the shop at the same time, but yet he wanted a fourth set of eyes on these. So I would literally have to go back to the hotel and go to the front desk. Hey, I'm expecting a fax. And boy, Lou would have it no other ways. He was always such a perfectionist. Way back when, before I arrived, Michael, Lou would actually drive the proofs down to the printer. It was about an hour and a half, 2 hour drive. It was printed here in Indiana. It was about a 2 hour drive for him. Lou dropped them off. This goes to what a perfectionist he was. Lou dropped those proofs off, came back, was looking them over, and found one tiny little mistake in one line, and he drove 2 hours back down to fix that one line on that one page, because it would have driven him nuts not to do so. So it goes to show what a perfectionist. As we all know, and as we all continue to find out with the tributes that keep pouring in, he was certainly one of a kind and an irreplaceable one of a kind.
For our YouTube audience, Todd, can you show us that hat a little bit? Because that is a vintage, beautiful blue and gold hat. That probably would have preceded Coleman Publishing, which purchased blue and gold, 2009 or 10?
This is circa 2006.
So that's 2006. So that is beautiful that thing has survived 15 years.
This is my pride and joy, man.
Absolutely. When I saw you wearing that last week, I was jealous, and I almost stole it from you.
You know what? It was funny, Michael, because I went and had finally had a chance through COVID and whatnot. I've had to kind of stay away from my parents. My mom's health isn't that terrific, and my dad's 80, 82. But I had a chance to go visit them. They've been vaccinated, and I gave Dad 2 of these hats, and they're still there. One of them's in pristine condition. It's a white one. Boy, I came this close, but I didn't think it was right to steal from your dad.
No, yeah, all good. So, Lou Somogyi passed April 17th due to a heart attack. Played tennis, and I believe he just got back in his car and passed.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, so this past Friday, Lou Somogyi's funeral was held at the Basilica on Notre Dame's campus. The night before was the wake, and at the wake, Muffet McGraw, legendary Notre Dame women's basketball coach, Rod Balanis, a current Notre Dame assistant basketball coach, Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley. Give us some of the names. We were both there. There's a bunch of other guys and gals that were there who were very notable that attended. And can you just touch on the funeral? Because, man, that was a beautiful funeral.
Well, Michael, you and I were blessed, and frankly, I was humbled, and I'm sure you were as well, when we were asked to be pallbearers. I mean, Lou had so many friends and so many people that loved him. For us to be chosen, I don't know if honor is quite the right word, but maybe honor is the right word.
Hell
frankly.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. But that church is so beautiful. I thought the service was absolutely amazing. Father Doyle, he's a longtime reverend at Notre Dame. He knew Lou well. And so the homily wasn't about anecdotes and nuggets that other people had told him. It was from his own personal experience. And he talked a lot about Lou being great and good. And that really stuck with me. He was great at what he did because of his passion for what he did. And he was good in spirit and good in heart. He talked about Lou being great and good. He said there's no better combination. And boy, if anybody modifies that, it would be Lou Somogyi. But yeah, it was a wonderful service. Michael, one thing that struck out at me during it, and I don't know how many people noticed it, but given where I was seated, it was hard to miss. It was kind of a gray morning that Friday morning. It was a little bit of a gray morning. The service was at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And the second the organ started the service, the sun broke through outside and it came through the stained glass windows and it threw this beam of multicolor light onto Lou's casket. And I
Mm.
about lost it, man. It was one of the most powerful moments I think I've ever seen. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. It was just so fitting for that to happen at that exact time. It really sent like a message from above.
It was the colors of the casket. I mean, that was the nicest casket I've ever seen. What two colors would a guy who spent 39, 40 years of his life working for Blue and Gold Illustrated? I mean, what it was a fitting casket. It was a
Yeah,
beautiful blue and gold casket.
it was gold on top, a subtle gold, not a
Right.
gaudy gold.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of naturally, as it went down, turned to blue. It really was a beautiful, a beautiful final resting bed for Lou. Perfect. I was ripped up. I was just stunned to lose such a remarkable man at such a young age. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, exercised. I mean, stayed fit, and was just such a gracious person to all. He just offered so much to everybody. I think what struck me, Michael, you mentioned the tributes. I think one of the common themes that I found was very impressed by and moved by was that Lou, even though so many of these folks never met him in person, so many folks said they felt like they lost one in their own family. And if you can leave this earth, leaving that kind of impact on people that you've never met, what better testament to your life is there?
Yeah. So let's talk about the tribute. So our upcoming issue of Blue and Gold, we have a first draft of the cover. Not sure if I'm allowed to share it yet, so we'll hold that. But the cover is something that Lou would hate. Like, there's no doubt about it. Everyone says that Lou would hate all this attention and everything,
Oh, he
but
would. Oh, he would.
Lou, I wish you were here to tell me that. I really do, my brother. But
He's
so it's
upstairs cussing us out. Well,
so it's absolutely it's gonna be a beautiful cover with Lou and the Basilica in the background, and so the tribute section to Lou Somogyi started out as 8 pages, and then it went to 12. What's it at now? Like 50?
16 last I checked. Now,
I could have sworn it was 20. I thought I was about to say 20, so 16 we're at. Tell us
probably
about
so.
that. Give us a little preview. I'm sure some of these, you some of those articles in pages we will post online as well for our web audience. But if you guys are out there and you're like, I don't have a Blue and Gold Illustrated subscription, this is one you'll probably want to buy a copy or two of. This, the recruiting issue, and the football preview, those are what you need to get every single year. But this one you're definitely going to want to purchase. So give us a little sneak peek at what to expect in the Lou Somogyi tribute section.
I will. I sort of took it upon myself, since I think I've known Lou longer than anybody on staff, other than obviously Michelle, and as far as the writing staff.
Sure.
Um, I really wanted to do this and kind of organize it. And it's been amazing. And again, Michael, it speaks to Lou. I sent out 21. I was trying to come up with a list of colleagues, anybody from Tony Roberts, the famous radio voice of Notre Dame for many years, Mike Collins, the PA announcer, Jack Nolan, obviously a longtime radio guy, and not to mention, Tim Priester, Eric Hansen, South Bend Tribune. I sent out 21 requests for tributes, 200, 250 words, nothing over the top, to colleagues, former colleagues. And guess what?
21.
All 21 came back, and they are wonderful. I mean, it was therapeutic for me because I was so distraught at the time. And while many of these made me cry as I was putting them together, a lot of them made me laugh too. And so it was therapeutic for me to work through this. And somebody told me it would be, and they were certainly right. So that's a great part of it right there. I'm very proud. Those are all gathered up, sent in. I'm sure the folks down in Durham that package all this up and lay it out will do a great job. We have some great old photos of Lou too. Another segment is going to be our staff tributes. Obviously, me and Michael are included in that. And then I was able to talk to many of the coaches that Lou worked closely with: Muffet McGraw, Mike Bray, Digger Phelps, Brian Kelly, and then Jax Warbrick, without me even reaching out to him, reached out to me.
Wow.
So I have some folks there. I'm still trying to chase down Lou Holtz. I'm having a tough time getting him. Boy, I'm gonna try right up till deadline to get him. But
If
that
it,
would be another segment.
I'll say, if anyone in our YouTube or podcast knows how we can get a hold of Lou Holtz for this, please let us know.
Yeah, I think I have the right contact. I don't know how often older gentlemen like him check their emails. So
Sure.
it's really come together well, and for all the wrong reasons, I'm excited to see the finished product. Still a lot of work to do. I'm going to try to put together best I can, kind of a biographical, chronological look at Lou's life, even before Blue and Gold Illustrated. So it's going to be a nice package, and I'm going to be honored when it's done, and I'll tear up again.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that Lou had anything outside of Blue and Gold. We never heard about it. I mean, Lou is
Right,
just
right.
work. Yeah, he was such a workhorse for us.
Well,
Obviously
his
that.
brother Michael. Here's just a little tidbit. Sorry to interrupt you there, my
No,
friend.
please.
His mom, he always wanted to. He kind of grew up in the shadow of the Golden Dome. He's a South Bend guy. Went to South Bend St. Joe grade school, South Bend St. Joe high school, and always dreamed of going to Notre Dame, and was always tied into Notre Dame athletics. Always, that was always his passion. All of them, not just football, but all of them. His mother recognized that, so his mother, Irene Horvath, took a job in one of the cafeterias or one of the kitchens there at Notre Dame, because one of the perks, if you worked for the university, your child could go there either free of charge or at a reduced rate. And it was so important for Lou to go to Notre Dame that Irene made the sacrifice to go make very little money on her own so that Lou could go to Notre Dame.
Wow. I feel like as more time goes on, we hear more of these stories about Lou that he would never let get out. I mean, the more we're just going to learn about how truly a Notre Dame icon he is. I mean, if there's a movie about Rudy, there should be a movie about Lou Somogyi.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, and I think I've shared this story on air, when Lou got married to his wife Amalia last September. I mean, I don't think really anyone knew about it. Did you know about it, Todd? Did you know he's got? No,
Nope. And
no.
I had worked with him since 2005, and
Tim,
I didn't.
yeah, I think Tim Priester, who worked with him since the '80s, did even know. Michelle Hamilton, who's our advertising director at Coleman Publishing and Blue and Gold, she was there, and Stu Coleman, our boss, was there. But he texted me and said, because I knew about it, basically because he told me he doesn't want people knowing about it, like on the message board. And part of it is because Lou is just a private guy, but I think another part was he just didn't want that attention. Like, he didn't want a whole thread thanking him and all that, and
You're exactly
or
right.
excuse me, congratulating him on everything. So yeah,
I think it's kind of a battle between, was he a private person, or did he just never want it to be about him? We're trying to dig up some old stories to run in the magazine and online, obviously, that Lou had done some old columns. So I went to the office, and we have these binders of every edition that
yep,
has ever run, every Blue and Gold Illustrated, going all the way back to 81. And I was flipping through them year by year by year by year. It's never about Lou. I know, every once in a while, I'll when I write a column, I'll sneak it in and talk about an experience that I had on campus
sure.
or with somebody. Never wanted it to be about Lou. and it really showed in his writing. We did find a couple, though. We did find a couple that I'm really excited. We'll put those in print, and we'll certainly get them online as well.
Wow, that's a surprise.
Yeah, it is. Well, the funny thing is, Michael, this is kind of a funny story. There's one edition that we don't have in these binders up here, and you can probably guess which one it is. It was the one after the '88 championship game. All those were sold out or accidentally disappeared up here, whatever the case may be. We don't have any of those. And that was the one I went right to as far as maybe Lou's first column to run in the magazine, because we're gonna continue to tribute Lou in his fifth quarter space there. But
Sure.
we didn't have that one, but we found some other good ones. Like, was it you that stumbled
Yeah,
across that?
yeah,
That
yeah.
really
Jude, yeah, Jude Seymour, who's if you guys are familiar with One Foot Down, a Notre Dame blog, he is. I don't know what to call Jude, but maybe he's like the Notre Dame media historian now that Lou's gone. Like he has every blue and gold, pretty much
Yeah.
ever. He said he's missing about 10 from 81, but otherwise he has everything. So he was able to send us. I reached out to him on Twitter, and about 20 minutes later, he sent me that article, the exact article that
Wow.
we were looking for. So,
He's reached out to me a couple times, so I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah. So
he's
Jude, if you're listening to this, you are a godsend, brother. Thank you.
yes,
Thank you very much.
yes, indeed.
Anything else you want to talk about, Lou, before we move on to a little bit of football talk? Figured might as well talk a little ball, since this is the Irish Huddle, and Lou would want us to talk ball. So
He wouldn't want to.
no, he
Let me
wouldn't like any of this. But yeah, any closing thoughts on Lou for this show, Todd?
let me share one more funny story, and this is probably the one that stands out among many, many, many. And I think I told you this over the weekend when you were here, Michael. When I first started in '05, and I was the beat writer, Lou sat to my immediate right in the press box for home games. Or I'm sorry, I sat to Lou's immediate left. I should say Lou to my right.
Sure.
And then to Lou's right was this sort of nondescript, dial-less, buttonless telephone. I never paid much attention to it. I didn't know what the hell was going on. That thing would ring incessantly during the games. And finally I asked him, I'm like, who is that, Lou? It's NBC. NBC had a hotline to Lou to verify or put together historical context. They trusted one man for millions of viewers, didn't question what he gave them, didn't double check it, because within, I'd say, 3 to 5 minutes after Lou talked to him on the phone and hung up the phone, it would appear as a graphic on the NBC telecast. I will never forget that. I thought that was amazing that a billion-dollar television network would trust one guy with all that information to be accurate, and certainly he never disappointed.
You know, there's the saying, you don't know how good of a thing you have until it's gone.
Right.
As I am learning more about Lou, like that, like things like that fascinate me, but like that doesn't really ring true for this particular case with Lou, because I knew that I did not deserve to work with this guy. That me, an outsider to Notre Dame, before 2019 when I got this job at Blue and Gold Cover Recruiting, like I'm working with Lou Somogyi. Lou Somogyi is calling me. I kid you not, guys. Lou in his late 50s, covering Notre Dame since he was, 21 years old or something, knew literally everything about Notre Dame athletics, everything. He's calling me about like what he should write from a press con. Like, hey, Mike, should I go this direction or this direction? What time should I post it? Like, what would be appropriate for... I'm like, Lou, I need to be calling you, man. Why are you calling me with that stuff? Which is part of my tribute. I touch on that, Todd.
Yeah, it's perfect. Absolutely. Yep. I had a chance to go over Mike, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, that's a good tribute for sure. Now, somehow somebody left the dogs in here. So
all good. It's 2021. This is working for me.
right.
So let's move into some spring games. So that's on... was it Saturday? I should probably know this. Saturday at 12:30, I believe, streaming exclusively on Peacock. So I'm going to pull up that information so I can give it to you guys real quick, in case you're wondering what the heck Peacock is. But Todd, what are you kind of maybe hoping to see, expecting to see this Saturday?
Tyler Buckner.
Yeah.
I think I'm going right to the top there. I'm curious to see how this quarterback, which everybody is, obviously, that's been the big story of the spring here. I think it's important that they manage to find a way during the season to get Buckner some reps. And I think he complements Cone well. I honestly think Cone is going to be the starter. And I think Drew Pine will be, obviously, it sounds like the number two. But I still think, and I know we're going three in the depth chart here, and that could get a little bit ornery. But I think it's important with Buckner's skill set. I think he complements Cone well. I really do. And I'd like to see him get some real in-game action because, in my opinion, he really is the future of quarterback at Notre Dame. And I'm also looking forward to see Cone play. What we see on these little 3-minute videos they send out. He looks good, but they're not gonna have him look bad in those things. So I think for me, the quarterback play. I don't know how much with Jared Patterson out with injuries, and I think they're still sorting through the offensive line. That's a big story for me to follow too. Obviously, when you're replacing 4 starters, that's a big one. But I don't know how much we're going to glean from a spring game on what the starting lineup will look like as far as the offensive line. I think that's a big time work in progress. So for me, I think at this point, it would definitely be the quarterback situation that I'm most interested in.
So Todd, you mentioned this fall you want to see Buckner get in here and there, and I'm kind of thinking, how often do you actually see that?
Yeah.
Like
No, he sounds
Tebow and back Tebow and Chris Leak, or Oklahoma had that big goal line quarterback Bell. I mean, like, and then I'm thinking back when Michael Vick was on the Eagles. I think he would kind of come in for like a little wildcat or something here and there. I mean, just thinking like practically. I mean, Notre Dame couldn't even get Jordan Johnson on the field. Like everyone's like, I want 5 snaps a game of Jordan Johnson.
yeah,
Like
I
that's
know,
going to
I
make a
know.
big difference. So, I mean, do you just think Buckner should just get that experience or just see what you have? Like, what's the thought there?
You make a good point. I think a lot of us, me included, obviously sort of fall into this trap, and we fall into it in spring a lot too. I mean, I remember Junior Jabby from back in the day had a monster spring game, and all the chatter was, "Oh my God, is he going to be the starter? Is he going to be the starter?" I don't think he took a snap the entire season then, but I just feel like, indeed, I think when you look at his athleticism and what he can do in a dual threat capacity, I honestly would like to see him get some use, even if it's in a blowout situation. But you're right, Michael. It's hard for me to argue with you. You see a lot of those. We talk a lot about these types of things, but they don't always come to fruition. Um, I guess we have to always be a little bit careful to read too much into spring ball and the spring game, but I always fall into this trap every year. I keep saying I'm not going to, but I always do. I mean, let me throw it back to you. What are you most interested to see?
I think the O line is definitely a big one, Todd. Let's see what the offensive line looks like, personnel groupings. For me, it's not so much about who looks good and who doesn't. I know Lou. If I said that, if Lou were here and I said this, he would probably give me a standing ovation of like, if the offense is looking good, then it's, well, why is the defense stink? But then if the
Right.
defense looks good, so why does our offense stink? We get those comments too. Now there are some things like the center, Zeke Rell having some low snaps, like that's just on him. Like like there's nothing that the defense is doing there. But for the most part, both sides of the ball can't look great. Like someone is going to win and the other side's not. But so for me,
One of
it's
the
more. Go ahead, Todd.
One of the things I always kind of try to evaluate is when I watch a spring game is looking beyond the front line talent. I like to see what the twos and the threes look like.
Yes.
I always think that's an important evaluation point for me. You know what Kyron Williams, you know what you're going to get from Kyron
Right.
Williams. You know what you're going to get from Michael Mayer. Offensively, a lot of the defensive line guys that are back, your Heinisch and Tagovailoa, but it's sort of those twos and threes, sort of, especially since we don't have any access to spring ball this year. I think that's probably where my focus will be beyond really looking at evaluating how the quarterbacks are playing is, what's behind the front line guys? What does that depth look like?
I mean, the staff knows what they have. Like this, it's not like this spring game is going to be some revelation to them, right? I mean, they've seen these guys. They've had 13 practices. Thursday, April 29th was practice 14. Of course, Saturday is the 15th practice. So I don't think there's going to be some big revelation. I feel like it's a little bit more for excitement for the fans. And there's some competitive scenarios in this spring game, though. And the kids know it's on TV. So, there's a little bit more of a pressure factor. But yeah, I think personnel groupings is kind of the biggest thing to take away from it. Who the first team O line is, who's the second team O line, how many snaps does Buckner get, things like that. Who the starters are. It's not a definite answer to what things are going to look like against Florida State in that first game, but it's somewhat of an idea or a look. It gives us something. I mean, here we are, like you said, 3 minutes that Notre Dame sends the media after each practice, and we go goo goo gaga over it. I
Right, I
slow it
know,
down
right?
and break every play down, and they're literally in the last video I did on Tuesday. I was like, "There's Gabriel Rubio standing in the background with a cast on because he injured his arm." That's what we've resorted to, Todd.
Yeah, exactly. But this one this is a little more special this year, given what we were all up against last year with the COVID. No spring game, so it just has a better feel to it. And God, maybe we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel here. I remember this time last year, we weren't even sure if there was going. I was pretty confident there was not going to be a football season, a regular football season, let alone a blue gold game. So I guess hope springs eternal, as they say, and so we do have that going for us. At least there is a game. At least some fans can go to said game, and there's going to be a little bit of media there. We'll certainly be represented. Patrick Engel will be there, and so it's a fresh start. It certainly is a lot of turnover that Brian Kelly, Michael, I honestly think this particular season, this 2021 season, is probably Brian Kelly's best measuring season since the 4-8 debacle in 16 heading into 17. With the turnover, losing your 3-year starting quarterback, 4 offensive linemen, a lot of talent on defense as well, with Karamoa. I honestly think I think that's what I'm most curious about, is the fact that there's so much turnover, and this really is a great measuring stick season for Brian Kelly as far as the overall health of his program.
Todd, I feel like this is almost like heading into like a new era of the Brian Kelly season. It's like 2017 to 2020 was like that post 2016 debacle. Now this is the post Tom, Ian Book era. Yeah, I think it's this might. I mean, this little section of his tenure might be the last. I mean, is Brian Kelly going to coach past like 2025? Like how many years does he have left? That's a whole different discussion for a different day. But yeah, I agree. It's like, how well have you been recruiting these past few years? We'll find out. Clearly, they didn't feel super comfortable at the quarterback position. I think mainly because Brendan Clark was out. He had a repaired knee, so they didn't have him coming into this spring. So I think that probably played a big part of them going out and getting Jack Cohn. But yeah, that's Phil Dracovic didn't clearly work out. So this spring it's a Drew Pine and Jack Cohn battle.
Well, don't I mean, but to your point, I guess you mentioned Clark and his cranky knee, as Brian Kelly called it. But at the same time, clearly Notre Dame didn't think that a Pine was ready to take over the reins. I don't know. I suppose we're going to see more and more of this with this transfer portal, and now players are going to be allowed to transfer, and play immediately. So you're going to see a lot of new faces every year. I guess I was a little bit surprised that Notre Dame hadn't groomed somebody a little bit more thoroughly. Of course, when you have a fifth-year quarterback in Ian Book, what are you going to do in a 3-year starter? So they were kind of put in a tough spot. It is interesting that Notre Dame is going to start more than likely on opening day a grad transfer quarterback. I don't think any of us really would have guessed that, at least heading into last year.
Well, part of the reason you don't have anyone really groomed is because Phil did leave. Brendan's
Exactly, yeah.
hurt, and Drew Pine only. I mean, how much could he have really been groomed? He didn't. He had one practice as a true freshman that spring when he came as an early enrollee. I mean, played what, probably like 10 snaps. I mean, as a freshman, I mean, Book was just so darn durable. He never got hurt and didn't really
Right.
give an opportunity for anyone to come take his spot. So
I would disagree with you there, though, a little bit because I thought there were plenty of opportunities to get Phil Jakovic out there. I mean, a lot of blowout
in
games.
2019,
Yeah, and they stuck with Book to the bitter end. I was disappointed. I wrote a column for the magazine and the website saying, you better watch it or this kid's going to leave because you're really not even giving him a look. You're going to need to get him some reps, and you're not doing it. They beat Bowling Green 52-0, and I'm not even sure Djokovic even played in that game. I think they skipped over him and played the third stringer
where's
instead. If
Lou
I'm
when
not
you
mistaken.
need him? Where is
Yeah,
Lou when you need him? He would
there we
know.
go. There we go. Yeah, he
No,
would correct me immediately.
that's a good point. It always did feel like they would play Book until like it was beyond the point of why is he still in the game? Like,
Right. Yes.
and
Exactly.
I mean, Brian Kelly knows a lot more about football and managing a roster and everything than I do, but still, that did feel a little strange. All right, I hope that the South Bend Tribune guys at Indy Star don't mind me putting this up on the screen. Information about the Blue Gold game. It is 12:30 Saturday, May 1st. Game won't air on traditional television this year. Instead, we'll be streaming live on Peacock. It is free. So you can download it through your computer or your phone or your smart TV. I wish I were the expert on Peacock. I do have it on my Roku. Um, but I still don't know exactly how it works. So, Todd, do you have it figured out? Because you're probably not going
Oh,
to get to
really?
go. So, do you have it figured out?
You're going to ask the 53-year-old Mike? I do have Roku, though. I do have that. So
Well, then you should be good. Yeah, you
I'll
should be
figure
able
it
to.
out. I'll find it. I'll
Yeah.
find it.
You know what's funny, Todd, as we close here, and I don't think I've said this to you before. You call me Michael. I don't know why you call me Michael. I go by Mike, but I kind of like it. Only my wife and my mom call me Michael, but and Todd Burlage and Mason Plummer. Mason Plummer calls me Michael too. I don't really know why, but I just had to say that
Elite
on air.
company. That's elite company I'm in.
Mason's just a little bit over you, Todd, but yeah.
Right. I have a feeling I know where he got it.
Probably you, yeah, that's right. 'Cause I hope he's not talking to my mom or my wife. So,
That's great.
all right. Well, that is going to do it for this Lou Somogyi tribute in remembering the goat of all. He's the goat, always will be the goat, and of course that is the acronym for greatest of all time. Not only covering Notre Dame athletics, but just as a man.
Yes.
Shit, man, gonna miss him. Probably can't say that cuss word. I'm sorry, guys, if that offended you, but gonna
I've
miss
said
him.
many times, and I'll leave you with this. Lou Somogyi was the man every man should strive to be.
Yeah. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the Irish Huddle. Appreciate you guys listening or watching down to the end here. Make sure you go to blueandgold.com for all of your Notre Dame football coverage. And in the description box of this video and at blueandgold.com, we have information for the Lou Somogyi scholarship at Notre Dame and how you can contribute to that. That is a really neat opportunity for folks. I mean, it is the priority for that is to give scholarship money to kids who are at Holy Cross trying to go to Notre Dame, just like Lou Somogyi. Again, that is going to do it. Appreciate you guys listening and watching. Have a great rest of your week.